Everyone, welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. Today, I have my new friend, Angela D'Antonio, with me, and Angela was connected to me by Sarka, so thank you, Sarka. Angela, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
My name is Angela, and I work at the moment. I have lots of things that I kind of have piled on because I have ADHD, and that's part of who I am. But right now, I am a executive coach for neurodivergent founders and solopreneurs, and I also am a keynote speaker.
I love that. Now, you've done a lot of work with helping entrepreneurs build their businesses, and I know you also do a lot with kids. First of all, how did you come to realize that you were, in fact, a visionary entrepreneur, aka neurodiverse? What was that discovery like? How did you realize that you were not typical and you could do things others couldn't?
So I was diagnosed late in life, like a lot of women in their 40s. I think there's usually two things that push women in their 40s to finding that diagnosis. One is perimenopause kind of sets a lot of things aflame and makes the symptoms worse. For me, it was option two, which was my kid got diagnosed, and that led to my own diagnosis. It took a while. She was actually late diagnosed, even at age 13, because I feel like a lot of us who are neurodiverse don't recognize that there's anything unusual about our kids because it's just like mom and dad, right? Yeah, it's just like mom and dad. So I took her in to get diagnosed. I actually knew the doctor quite well. He was a friend of mine, and he diagnosed her. And I was like, wait a minute, I do all those things. And he kind of laughed and said, yes, you do. And that was like the beginning of how I got diagnosed at 47. I also interestingly told a friend from high school that I had just been diagnosed, and she said, I thought we knew that.
Where's the news flash here, right?
No, I was like, we didn't know that. So that was, yeah. So my diagnosis, I'm now like 49. So I'm actually only like a couple years from having been diagnosed, but I was 47 when it actually finally came through.
I love that. And I think, one of my little exceptions, I don't like the word disorder in relation to how our brains naturally work, but we'll let people have that label because it somehow helps them. What is understanding yourself? How has that changed how you view your work, your parenting? What's been the biggest aha for you in the last 2 years post-diagnosis?
So a lot of it is understanding. So because the love I have for my children, I learned a lot more about how my diagnosis and the fact that I have ADHD is affecting how I parent them, but also, ways in which to support them. And one of the things I really let go of was there's kind of this, shame spiral. I think that a lot of people who are neurodivergent have, where because when you were a kid, you were always told to like sit still, or why can't you just, and then whatever followed just was something that you actually couldn't do that easily. And so you start to have this internal voice. That external voice that you get as a child starts turning into an internal voice. And I learned to kind of shut it off, because I would never speak to myself. I would never speak to my children the way that I was speaking to myself, right? So now when I have a day where I can't focus, which basically yesterday was, it's like, it's okay. I just let it go, instead of adding the extra weight of, why can't I do this like everybody else can? What did all those things that you kind of question yourself about. I've just learned how to turn that voice off, and it's just making me kinder, both to my kids and to myself.
I love that. And I think one of the things I see a lot is people react to the behavior. They don't recognize the triggers and the warning. We are like little rattlesnakes. If you pay attention, there's warning signs. We don't, my son has a kid at his school who suddenly flips desks, and it's like, yeah, what did he do before that? What did you miss? Because he'll be like, I need to go in the hallway. And the teacher will be like, no, you pay attention. It's like, you can't force him, because suddenly he feels like a caged animal. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, the desk gets flipped.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is one of those funny, I hear stories about that a lot with the kids in school. And when a kid is dysregulated and the teacher just touches them, and that's sort of the trigger, because not everybody wants to be touched, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to understand when that is the appropriate moment for that student at that time, right?
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I've been aware. I actually diagnosed myself when I was 10. We had one of those medical dictionaries, and I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely. Now, of course, that the things have changed. So I've just always known I was different. But when my kids came along, I assumed they would be different. And people are like, oh, they'll figure it out. And I'm like, no, they won't. I'm gonna help them. And so it's been fun because um, I have two boys. They're both neurodiverse. My wife, she's still in a little bit of denial, but um, her mom used to work with special needs kids, and they were the really dysregulated, dysfunctional, nonverbal autistic kids of the 70s, 80s. And my wife's like, there's no way. And I'm like, yeah, 100%. I'm autistic. I'm ADHD. I guarantee the boys are. But instead of waiting to the reaction point, I can help them when I first recognize the signs. And I have this weird theory, Angela, I'm going to share. If I can help them not get all of the trauma that people with our special skills get, they're going to be amazing human beings.
Yeah. And also in some ways kinder, because if somebody's responding to them and their needs, like even proactively, then people learn that and pass that on. I mean, in some ways it just makes for a kinder world, right?
And just knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It's, and I'm not proud of this, but the last parent teacher interview I was allowed to go to, my son in high school had the nerve to fall asleep in math class. And of course, my wife and the teacher were mortified. And I said, whoa, let's talk about this, because this is not normal. So what was going on? And he said, well, he had his homework done, and I told him just to sit there quietly. And he put his head down and fell asleep. And I'm like, did he disrupt the class? No. So he was done. And they said, well, he needs to pay closer attention. He needs to be more interested in what's going on. And he triggered me. I'm not proud of this, but I said, or maybe you could be more interesting. I was asked not to come back. But it's like, I'm tired of all these people without understanding. This is not a behavioral problem. This is a regulatory, regulation of the nervous system problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, there's always these jokes about kids of my generation that all of us were in the gifted and talented program, right? That there was this, because all of us learned how to overcompensate and mask and all of the things, because if you are able to, and I honestly believe a lot of how well people are regulated has to do with home life, right? So if you're lucky enough to be in a place that you can, self-regulate fairly well, you can be outrageously successful. And especially, in the school system, you just learn, again, it's pattern recognition, right? Like you learn what's expected of me, how to get the A, how to check the box, right? And then you just do it again and again and again, right?
It's funny because both my boys, but why do we have to? And I'm like, it's society's rules. There's a checkbox. You make it to 18, you finish grade 12, you can be as weird as you want. But for now, normal people sit at desks and pay attention. And I'm like, you can drift off in your mind, just, do it quietly. And
I ended up homeschooling both of my kids because we live in a rural, isolated location where I am. And I knew that the school system wasn't going to be able to give them what they needed. So, and, at this point, by all measures, my kids are outrageously successful. But had they been in a public school that told them that they were not enough over and over and over again, I think their stories would be much, much more different than they are now.
Well, and it's kind of funny because I was always simultaneously told I'm not enough and I'm too much. It was like, which is it exactly?
Oh,
I'm okay with either one, but I can't reconcile the two,
yeah, that I can see that. I can see that. One of my daughters especially would fulfill that requirement on both ends.
Yeah. And it's like if I'm interested in something, you get 110%. If you're boring me, I'm gone and I'll be gone quietly, but I used to pull out my book and I'd be reading in class and the teacher would be like, you need to pay attention. Why? You're going to talk about this next and I already know it. How do you know? Am I wrong?
Pattern recognition.
It's like I was bored yesterday, so I read the textbook. I know where you're going today.
It's funny. That is funny.
So now you do a lot of different things, and for the record, this is not an algorithm, so I'm not going to put you in one corner. But what are you most curious about right now? What's got you most excited? Because again, today at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time is probably different than tomorrow at this time.
Possibly, possibly. Yeah, I honestly I started this year, like as in when 2026 started I started journaling more, which has been a really nice practice. I Some of it I think is because I'm turning 50 this year and it's making me introspective. Also that both of my kids are starting to leave the home, also making me introspective.
Yeah.
So I've started widening what I'm doing. I feel like in a lot of the communities and circles I'm in, which are full of, people building their own businesses, usually founders, solopreneurs, people are giving up too soon. People are, buying 10 million programs that promise them, I don't know, 20K months, whatever the latest Instagram feed is promising you. They're buying all these courses, they're adding every new tech in the world and and then it doesn't work and it's not moving the needle and then they just give up. And I think there's something really missing from the process. I think people are missing the human element more than anything. I think a lot of young founders especially want to just work on their laptop wherever they work and not interact with people. And I think there's something really lost in business when you don't talk to your customers, clients, people who do the same thing you do, friends, like people. You need all of those human connections. So one of the pieces is trying to drive people back to more human connection. And a lot of it too is also just simplifying people's, kind of work stack, teaching people that a lot of that stuff you see on social media is either a lie or the one in a million. And that, you don't feel like a failure because you're not pulling off this, don't have 100,000 followers in 6 months on LinkedIn, right? So
Yeah.
so I feel like some type of responsibility. I actually had kind of told you in an earlier conversation that in a community I'm in, people call me Mama Bear, and so part of it is that interaction that I'm having with other founders that's kind of building what I'm doing. So I started building a new keynote that basically talks to business leaders and founders, and I started doing some coaching. So I was doing some sales consulting work and I was finding that I was also coaching the founders. And so I've started just coaching founders as its own thing and helping people, build their business towards what they're aiming for. I also question people's goals a lot. A lot of it is, because a lot of the goals that we have aren't our own.
Yeah.
And until people step back and look at them and recognize that, it's like what they really want in life, what their real goal is. If it came from social media, it came from mom and dad, it came from a teacher, it came from a spouse, right? And so I've started working through those issues, and that's what I've been working on basically this year. And that's built into both executive coaching. I'm starting to build a mastermind community of neurodivergent women founders as well, but basically trying to work through some of those questions with people.
I love that. And I think we live in a society where everybody wants to tell us this is the one size fits all. And what we need to recognize is we're not off the rack. We need bespoke everything. And, I'll share a very weird story because it might give you some inspiration, but I'm addicted to journaling. I think it is the healthiest addiction I've ever had. Ryder Carroll got me hooked with his bullet journal method. You've got one, I bet. Okay. I'm going to blow your mind because I was getting tired of the repetitive setup. So what I did was I built Jeff's journal. I
Mhm.
self-published it on Amazon, and I can order it whenever I need a copy, but it's all set up and ready to go. And I laid it out deliberately so that I can take pictures, upload it up to my AI, and I can use it as notes and things. So I made it analog because my brain needs to write. But then there's a digital. So, because at one point, my autism ADHD also shows up with some OCD. I couldn't leave a journal behind. So at one point I was traveling, like speaking around the country, and I had like 10 journals with me, and I'm like, this is getting ridiculous.
That's heavy.
So it was like, and I'd go through, and it was always carry on, right? And
Mhm.
those poor people at the airport, they're like, why do you have so many journals? This is suspicious. And I'm like, not if you have OCD.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might need one of these, and I don't want to leave my children at home.
Yeah, I have considered going electronic at several points, but I just can't do it. Like there's something about the feel of the
Yeah.
writing, and I think the physical process of it as well that just does something better for my brain.
Yeah. It helps our brains. I can't explain it. And for what it's worth, it helps recall. They've done scientific studies, and the active writing uses a different part of the brain, so we recall better.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was fascinating to me because I was getting frustrated by the repetitive. Oh God, I hate setting this thing up. But
Mhm.
now I've got a nice, and this is how Amazon has been very helpful for me. I have this little satchel that I take with me, and my wife calls it a man purse. My kids insist it's a satchel. I don't care, but I actually measured it, and my book is bespoke for that thing.
That's crazy cool.
So if I break that, I got to resize my books. But the key is it worked well for me to have the physical book, and then I needed the digital piece, and that's
Mhm.
I'm lucky that AI recognizes my handwriting, so it will automatically transcribe it. But a lot of people are chasing that one tool that everybody says I got to do this.
Mhm.
But the funny piece is, and I'm going to say this with love, the people who are selling those, here's how you need to work to succeed, most of the time they're neurodiverse, and it works because they're neurodiverse. And
Mhm.
because, it's like a combination to a vault. They've got, the right 6 digits lined up. You give it to you or me, we're going to be like, this doesn't quite work.
Yeah. Yeah, one size fits all rarely works for
Yeah.
anyone anyway, like, even across the diversity that just exists in human existence, right?
Yeah.
But and people do, I mean, maybe it's more with neurodivergent people, but I think anyone, they buy this idea of what is the optimized wake up time or the optimized exercise or meditation or whatever they
Yeah.
think is going to be like the magic formula, and they can't maintain it. And then it's the same thing. They beat themselves up for it, which
Yeah.
then lowers the odds that they're going to be able to maintain anything anyway. Right. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, one of the things I work with both personally and with people I know is also just finding whatever that tiniest step is that you can measure on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a list of 10 things, which I have done. Stretch, exercise, fast, like the whole like,
Yeah.
and people can't maintain that. Like I guess there's some superheroes who do, or people on social media who claim they do. I would even say the ones that say they do, a small percentage of them actually do.
Yeah.
So but it's kind of nefarious because there's all this messaging out there, and people, are kind of living online, and
Yeah.
they're deciding that there's something wrong with them when it is part of it's the messaging isn't even truthful, and the rest of it is just that you haven't found what works for you anyway, right?
Yeah. And I think so. One other weird thing. So again, I have some weird hacks, and I'm sure you have. I discovered James Clear's book Atomic Habits. And so what I've figured out is every goal I have, I break it down into a maximum of 5 things I do every day. And this is not necessarily healthy, but if I have a habit and I start to get used to it, I check it off every day in the book. And I need streaks. So if I cannot break a streak, but I've engineered my life so that the things I have to do are done very early in my day when my energy's, and again, my energy is best.
Mhm.
And then I can go off and chase rabbits or do whatever it is I do. Squirrels come up a lot in my life. And
What happens when you break a streak though?
oh, I will spiral out of control unless I'm ready for it. So I have to have a good reason for breaking it.
Yeah, because that's the part that I think is the hardest is when somebody breaks a streak for them not to be like, "Oh, never mind," and then stop completely. Like that's
Yeah.
the hardest part is like being like, "Oh, I couldn't exercise today, but I can still do it tomorrow." Because it's the same thing for me. Like a streak is like motivation. Do you call anything a challenge? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm on it, right? And so
Yeah.
being able to break that, or when it breaks, inevitably because you have COVID or
Yeah.
your dad's in the hospital or whatever happens, a lot of people then just are like, I knew I couldn't do it, and then they just stop. And so that's
Yeah.
the really challenging piece of kind of building that habit, right?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. A friend of mine, he's ultra successful. He's, if he sets a goal in life, he accomplishes it. And he had a year-long streak on some meditation app, and the app glitched and it broke his streak. And I was watching this very successful guy. I mean, this guy owns a lot of things. He employs hundreds of people, and he unraveled over a streak. And I'm not kidding, Angela. He tried to buy the company so he could make the coders reset his streak.
I feel this. I so feel this. I have to tell you, I'm in a community that has a challenge, and I'm like, challenge. And so I'm like, and I have an alarm set every day, and I'm checking, and I'm checking, I'm checking. And
Yeah.
they decided to reset it quarterly because there's new people in the community, and it's, when you come in and everybody's a quarter ahead of you, like it kills the motivation for new people. So we'd actually agreed as a community, let's reset quarterly, right? But the old information stayed there. And because the person who reset it lives in Europe, they reset it so that, like, in my time zone, I didn't get to record on the last day. And so I was 3 challenges short of everyone else, even though I had done it. And like that messed with my head so badly because the numbers weren't right. There's a leaderboard and the numbers aren't right. And I even wrote, because I'm a crazy person, like, in this community, why are we even doing this if the leaderboard is not going to reflect reality?
Yeah. Yeah, we as a people are very literal, and I'm trying to explain this to my kids, but we have righteous indignation like you wouldn't believe. And yeah, take away my streak or give me a leaderboard that's wrong. For what it's worth, Carl Jung was instrumental in helping set up Alcoholics Anonymous, and that little thing, the sobriety chip, was one of the reasons many people got sober, was they wouldn't break the streak.
It's wild. It's
And
wild.
I have a friend of mine who he's got his 38-year chip, and I'm like, you are not breaking that streak. Like, there's no way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating how that works in
Yeah.
people's brains. Hmm.
So let's talk about how somebody right now, and again, it's not tomorrow, but if somebody wanted to work with you, collaborate with you, talk to you about joining one of your masterminds, what's the best place to find out more about you or how they can collaborate with you?
There are 2 good places. I am on LinkedIn 5 days a week, not on the weekends, but I am there 5 days a week. So it's pretty easy to find me on there. And then I also have a website that is literally my name. Angela Marie D'Antonio is my website.com. So, and if you find me on LinkedIn, you're going to find my website as well. But those are the 2 big places where you can find information on me.
I love it. I love it. Now, what's one thing you wish you'd known earlier in life that you're probably teaching your children now, What's something you wish somebody listening going, maybe I am neurodiverse? What advice would you give somebody who's contemplating, maybe that's me?
Oh, interesting. I do think that there is a lot of value in getting an earlier diagnosis. It was interesting. A really good friend of mine, I met her in person in Sarajevo in October of last year, and she just asked me about ADHD. She was actually just curious because she knew that I did a lot of work with people and students who have ADHD. And I started kind of rattling off a list of things. And she told me later that she felt like I had described her to a T, right? And it blew her mind because
Yeah.
she always thought and her story was so interesting because her parents kept telling her just to be normal. That was the thing that she get. Why can't you just be normal, right? And so she thought she was the only one. And
Yep.
then yet when I described it, it described her so closely. And so like just suddenly realizing that first of all, she wasn't alone. Second of all, this is a real thing. And then also like as she was able to just do a little research, read a few books, dive in a little bit deeper, suddenly she didn't feel so alone. She knew some methods for, coping, compensating, learning how to work with her brain instead of against it. And she actually now she was always a LinkedIn personal branding specialist, but she's now actually working with people who are very much like her because she understands how their brain works. And ADHD was like that tag that helped her see that.
Well, and I think we work well together when we find each other. People ask me, how did you figure it out? My advice is if maintaining normal feels like a lot of work and you're spending as much time fitting in as you are doing, that's probably a sign. And, again, I don't care if you have a formal diagnosis or not. If sitting in a room listening to people drone on about the weather makes your head explode, you probably have some different abilities.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually someone who's super famous on LinkedIn who gives talks in some of these communities that I belong to. And I just stopped attending because there's something about their voice that no matter what I do, I can't focus on the words because
Yeah.
it's so even in monotone. So
Yeah.
it's a funny thing. And I mean, one of the nice things about getting a little bit older and knowing myself a little more, which again, journaling has made a huge difference.
Yeah.
That big word metacognition, right? Thinking about your thinking. The
Yeah.
more time you spend with that, the more I understand like how I work and what works for me. And I'm able to, in a lot of ways, cut my losses a little faster. And I
Yeah.
lose less time in some ways by just recognizing, hey, this is really just going to be a waste of my time. I'm going to be texting my friends the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
So that's one of the
It's
nice things about, kind of knowing yourself a little better and taking that time.
Well, and a funny thing, a lot of people, especially on the autistic side, extreme sensory overload. So very sensitive to light, very sensitive to noise. There's a certain tone. I can't listen to somebody because it's like a bee in my ear, and it's like, God, stop. My wife laughs because when I'm done somewhere, I'm done. I'll just turn around and walk out. And she's like, why didn't you give me a heads up? And I'm like, that was the heads up.
My daughter and I were just talking 2 days ago. The strip that we use, to plug things in, it has
Yeah.
a weird noise.
Yep.
And it's like this really high pitched noise, and you can only hear it at night when you go to bed because it's of course
Yeah.
quiet enough. And it was 2 or 3 nights ago, and I was like, what the? And my husband, first of all, is deaf in one ear, so he just sleeps on his good ear, and he's out. And he's like, I don't hear what you're hearing.
Yeah.
And then literally the next day, my daughter had mentioned, she's like, there's this noise in my room. I was like, you hear it too? I'm not crazy. But we
I can hear a dog whistle at times and it drives me nuts. And people are like, you can't hear this. And I'm like, yes, I can.
What does that say about you?
I don't know, but yes. Well, Angela, I want to thank you because it's always a pleasure. I will be connecting you with some really cool people because you're cool people. Welcome to the family and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure getting to know you. This has been really fun.